The all-new Nissan Serena represents a little bit of a revival for the Nissan brand here in Malaysia. I say this because the last new car they launched was the Navara way back in 2015. The rest of the range, meanwhile, is aging very quickly next to newer, fresher competition. This new Serena is without a doubt Edaran Tanchong Motor's most important launch for years, so it's crucial that it's a good one. Well, is it? Watch this video to find out what we like about it, what we don't like, and of course, what it's like to drive. It has taken a long time for the C27 Nissan Serena to reach Malaysian shores. The 5th generation model was unveiled in Japan in 2016. 2 full years later, the MPV is finally here in locally assembled CKD form. The C27 Serena is said to be an all-new model, but you'd be forgiven if you think it's more of an extensive facelift. After all, it does share the same, though slightly revised engine from the outgoing C26 model, the same tall, boxy shape, as well as being identical in length, height, and wheelbase. Here in Malaysia, even the wheel design has been carried over, which is usually unheard of between generation leaps. Overall, however, it does look a lot more modern and sophisticated compared to before, with a quirky JDM flavour to it. I especially like the sharp dual-tier headlamps up front and the glass wraparound on the back, together with the floating roof look. This goes especially well with the dual-tone colour options in the premium variant we see here. On the other hand, the new car uses halogen bulbs as daytime running lights instead of LEDs, and even the rear brake lights use normal bulbs. I mean, the old car had LED taillights, so what gives? A much more commendable addition is the new hands-free opening and closing of the twin-powered sliding doors. The clever split opening the rear tailgate is also a very well thought out enhancement. Better yet, both are offered as standard fitment even on the base model, along with automatic LED headlamps, keyless entry, cruise control, touchscreen head unit with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto support, a round view monitor, as well as front and rear automatic climate control. In fact, the premium Highway Star variant adds on mostly cosmetic items, such as 16s instead of 15-inch alloy wheels, V-Cool security window tint, leather upholstery, DVR dashcam, and a roof-mounted monitor for rear passengers. So, other than the small wheels, the cheaper Highway Star variant is actually pretty well equipped, which is more than can be said of most base models sold in Malaysia. Inside is where it gets really interesting. It still has this very unconventional layout where the dashboard is mounted very low, with the instrument cluster placed high up, well above the steering wheel. You can almost say that Nissan thought of this whole Peugeot iCockpit design well before the French did. The steering wheel itself is a giant leap forward for Nissan, finally retiring the tired old design. The same goes with the digital instrument cluster, which is far more pleasing to the eyes compared to the old cars, which looked like it was inspired by 80s Knight Rider era. There's one issue though, the steering wheel does not have audio controls, which is weird. Quality is good too. The whole top layer here feels very nice to the touch that you think it's actually wrapped in real leather. Down here, there are still a few scratchy hard plastics if you look hard enough, but in this price range, I think this is more than acceptable. If there's something that I don't like, it's that the 360-degree camera is displayed on the top screen, instead of the head unit where you'd expect it to. Also, it still uses a manual foot parking brake instead of an electronic switch. Overall, Nissan has managed to modernize the design without affecting the Serena's standout practicality factor. There are still plenty of compartments, most of them now with powered USB ports. There's actually 7 charging ports in the car, 1 for each passenger. And that brings us to the next pressing thing. Yes, there are only 7 seats here instead of 8 in the old car. But is that such a bad thing? Well, yes and no. The thing is, the old Serena had a very small center seat, which wasn't very comfortable, so most customers pushed the sliding seat forward and used the middle row as a makeshift individual seats instead. So for this generation, Nissan has chosen proper captain seats with dedicated armrest for the Malaysian customers. The seats here are much better shaped and definitely more comfortable than the flat seats from before. They're actually quite close to the front seats, complete with Nissan's zero gravity technology. Yes, I know it sounds very gimmicky, but they actually work. The downside comes when you need to carry large items like luggages for long holidays, forcing you to fold up the last row seats. This then turns your big MPV into a strict 4-seater instead of 5. So you see, it's a compromise either way. You either go with 7 seats and sacrifice sitting flexibility, or go with 8 seats and sacrifice sitting comfort. My take is, having captain seats is better 95% of the time, so I think Nissan made the right choice here. Moving on, the captain seats now offer a wider range of adjustments, including sliding them all the way back for a huge amount of legroom. As before, we also get useful tray tables and side window blinds, though the windows themselves only go down halfway. Access to the last row is now better and more flexible than before, and the seats, while not particularly supportive for long journeys, do offer good legroom even for adults. As for passenger egress, the addition of tumble-forward foot levers plus a switch to open the door make the last row feel less like a trap compared to most other MPVs and especially 3-row SUVs. The boot is the same as before, generous enough with all seats up, and there's also a deep underfloor storage. For more room, you can fold up the last row, though the process is perhaps harder than it should be. You can also lay all the seats down to fit very long items. What's new is the tyre repair kit, in place of a space-saver spare tyre in the facelifted C26 model. On to safety, you get 2 ISOFIX points in the middle row, but none in the last row. You also get 6 airbags, finally up from just 2 in the old model. Electronic stability control is, of course, standard across the range. Now, let's see how this new car drives. The very first thing you'll notice from behind the wheel is the driving position. It's very high, very upright, and your legs will go down almost vertically. Pair that with the steering wheel that is angled slightly like that, and you know that this is a very traditional MPV. It doesn't try to go for that car-like driving experience like quite a few other MPVs try to do. To me, that's a very good thing, because it gives you a very high commanding view out as well as very good visibility from where you're sitting here. You can see just how low the window line is compared to where I'm sitting. Together with the very large front quarter windows that you see here, you get an almost full uninterrupted view out. Nissan has worked a lot to get this done because they've made the A-pillars very thin without sacrificing its rigidity. As for the drive, the engine is the same 2-litre direct injection naturally aspirated engine as before. But now it has been tweaked slightly for better fuel economy. You now get 150 PS and 200 Nm of torque. And actually, that's 3 PS more than before, but 10 Nm less compared to the old one. It's the same story with the eco-electric motor. There's less hybrid assistance now, 48 Nm instead of 50 from before. But overall, Nissan says the car is better in terms of fuel economy by a full 13%, for an average of 14.2 km per litre. With all that, you may worry about the lack of performance. Well, having tested the cars back to back, the new and old, we can safely say that there's pretty much no difference between the two cars. 0 to 100 is done in 13.5 seconds, identical to the old car. You really don't feel the difference in torque. 13.5 seconds is a long time, so it's not a fast car. But for a family MPV, it's enough lah. I mean, at least you won't struggle going uphill, so yeah, it's not too bad. The transmission is a Nissan Xtronic CVT, and it actually feels slightly more direct, slightly quicker to respond compared to the old model. It also helps that the engine is quieter as well, so even when you plant your foot down like this, it's not excessively loud. The old car is just a little bit louder. For those of you who are not familiar with the Nissan Serena S-Hybrid, well, it's not a full hybrid vehicle. There's no EV mode, and the torque assist can only come in for a maximum of 1 second. But even then, it comes in handy when you're moving off from a standstill. That's usually when you use the most fuel anyway. It's a very small difference, but hey, good enough. On the bright side, you don't have to worry about having to replace the big hybrid battery later on. That's a good thing, right? As for how it drives exactly like an MPV should. It's very soft, it's very comfortable. The steering here is very slow. So as soon as you turn, you keep thinking that you need to put in more and more steering input because it's just very slow and very low geared. But on the flip side, it is very easy to maneuver around town and especially in parking lots because you get smaller turning radius. If you start taking the corners a bit too fast, the car rolls a lot, but even then it's slightly more controlled compared to the old car. The suspension is just too soft because it's more biased towards passenger comfort rather than sporty handling, and for an MPV, that's the right side to go to. The suspension is a lot softer and more controlled compared to the old cars. This makes the car a lot better when it comes to long distance journeys because it's quiet, it's very comfortable, it saves fuel, and of course there's standard cruise control for all models. But unfortunately, we don't get Nissan Pro Pilot in Malaysia. If you're looking for a sporty MPV, for sure this is not the right choice for you. It's not especially fast, the handling is a bit roly-poly, and the steering is slow and vague. But if you're looking for a nice and comfy MPV, I think this is very good. It doesn't pretend to offer car-like responses because it doesn't, and what it is a very competent people carrier. And that concludes our full review of the new Nissan Serena. In short, it's a great family MPV, well improved over the old model in pretty much all areas. So it's definitely worth the wait, and I think Nissan has an absolute winner here. In this price range, it's in a class of its own, and it's well worth to consider. It's me, Hafrishah from paultan.org. Thank you for watching.